Hello, welcome back to Loyaltiness channel. Thank you for joining me. Today we are going to talk about domestic violence and the protection that the laws of Ghana gives to the victims of domestic violence. Yes, thankfully we have a law in Ghana which was enacted in 2007 which protects victims of domestic violence. Now, where do we start from? Usually people get confused about what domestic violence is. People think that it only occurs in romantic relationships and husband-wife relationships. No, the law gives a very wide definition of domestic violence. Yes, so it can occur between you and your house helps, your co-tenant, a family member who is living with you, your ex-husband, someone you have a child with. Yes. So the law says that if you do any of these things against someone, any of the relationships that I just mentioned, then you'll be committing domestic violence. So if you physically abuse someone, or you threaten someone, or harm someone, you abuse someone economically, maybe the person depends on you for money and then you deny the person money, that's economic abuse. If you emotionally abuse someone, you keep making that person look ridiculous, the person look like they are of no use. That is emotional abuse, and that also forms part of domestic violence. Sexual abuse, if you infect someone with a virus, maybe an infection without telling them first. The commonest will be the HIV, without informing them that you have HIV. If you infect someone with that, that is also a form of domestic violence. Also, if you commit any of these with anyone you have any of the relationships that I have already mentioned with, then you are committing domestic violence, and this will be punishable by a fine of about up to 6,000 Ghana cedis, or up to 2 years imprisonment, or both. So both 6,000 or up to 2 years, or you can get 6,000 or 2 years only, up to 2 years only. That's domestic violence. One thing can amount to domestic violence, two things can amount. So you can just deny your house help food, and that will be domestic violence. You can beat your wife, you can deny your child food, you can emotionally abuse your husband, and that would amount to domestic violence under the laws of Ghana. So aside from the fine that the court can ask you to pay, you can also be asked to pay compensation to the victim. Yes. So if you keep abusing your wife, or you have abused your husband, if the court can ask you to pay some money to them as compensation, that is aside the 2 years imprisonment that you can be facing, or the 6,000 Ghana cedis that you will be facing. You can also you can be asked to pay their hospital bills. If it is a household, the same thing. If it's a family member, it's the same thing. And even if it's a co-tenant, it's also the same thing. You can be asked to pay compensation for the person. So please take note of that. On the fine and the imprisonment that you may be facing, what other things can we do for victims who are suffering under domestic violence in Ghana? You can make an application to the court for what we call a protection order. The protection order is an order that the court can make to say that, you know what, this person is complaining that you have threatened them, that you commit domestic violence against them, or you're actually committing domestic violence against them. But this protection order is to stop you in the meantime until we finish the case. Stop you from committing or further committing any acts of domestic violence against the victim. So it means that if you are depriving someone of food, if you are sacking someone from the matrimonial home, if you are emotionally abusing someone, if you are denying someone of school, economic, whatever it is, the law can tell you that, you know, whatever you are doing, stop right now. They're giving you this order that stop. If you don't do the consequences. The court can even say that don't go close to the victim, stay 50 meters away from the victim. Don't call him by phone, don't text him. The court can give special orders to make sure that the victim is right and protected from the abuser or from the offender until the case is finally determined. Yes, the court does that most of the times. You know, you can apply for this protection order without even notifying the other party. Yes, we call it an ex parte application. When you do that, the court may consider, oh, Is it important to call this person to come and answer why we shouldn't give this protection order against him? If the court thinks that it's an emergency and that there is no need for that person to be invited, the court will make the order, which is a temporary one, which will last for just 3 months. And then within these 3 months, the court will have to invite the offender or the abuser to come and make his point and answer questions as to why we should not make the protection order final. The final one can last up to 12 months, but it can be renewed and increased by the court at any time. And of course, when the court can cancel the protection order at any time when they think that it is of no use again. We also have what we call an occupation order. Occupation order is when you are living with someone, maybe it's a co-tenant or someone you're in a relationship with, and you live in one house or you live within the same building. The court can order the abuser or the offender to leave the matrimonial home or the place that the person has rented. In the meantime, waiting for the court to come with a decision. And the court will do this considering a lot of things. First, the court will make a social welfare officer come to the house to come and make enquiries, take psychological reports from psychologists and psychiatrists if there is a need for that. And the court will look at all these things to consider whether or not to grant an occupation order against one person to move out of the matrimonial home or the home which is shared by both the abuser and the victim. Remember that if you fail to respect the protection order or the occupation order by the courts, it means you'll be liable for another punishment. That is different from when we finish the case and we know that you have committed a domestic violence. This one, if you fail to respect the conditions that the court has placed on you, you can face up to 1 year imprisonment. If you breach the condition on 2 occasions or a subsequent date, it means you can also face up to 3 years. And the minimum that you spend is like a month in prison. So please take note of that and respect the orders of the court. There are circumstances under which the court will think that, this case is not that serious. Maybe the punishment is not so high. It's not up to 2 years. Or the offense is not so grievous. And so the court can say that, try and settle this out of court. Out of court doesn't mean that you go out of the court system, but the court will give you a place called the ADL section, where you can sit down with an officer of the court and settle the issues between you and the offender or you and the victim. So the court will send that person to use the authority that they have from the and to help both of you to come out with a better way to correct what has already been done and to make plans for the future so that it doesn't happen again. It is called an ADL session. It's a mediation. It is let's all discuss how to make things better. It is not somebody forcing you. Nobody can force you. If you are able to settle there and everybody is happy, there are apologies, compensation paid, and all of that, then we will not have to go back to the court again. But if you are unable to agree, then you have to go back to the court for the court to determine how much is the compensation, who did wrong, and who should go to prison. So the ADL section is another way of resolving issues. It helps to save the relationship between the parties, and that is only used when the offense is not grievous and the punishment is not up to 2 years. In addition to this settlement that you can do at the ADL section, the court can also make additional orders. Even as you are trying to settle, the court can make orders that, somebody should come and have a psychological look into the mind of the victim or the abuser. Or let's get a social welfare officer or a probation officer who is from the social welfare office to come and monitor the progress. You guys are still living together. How is it going? Is he complying with the orders of the court? So that the court can monitor to see who is doing right and who is not doing right. Right? It helps so that we will save the relationship. It helps so that we can be able to monitor to see that the person you brought to court is still not abusing you. There are several ways that we can protect you under the law, under domestic violence law in Ghana. So please, if you hear of somebody who is being abused or even somebody who is dead and you think that the person did not die a natural death but through domestic violence, please help the authorities. Report to the DOFSU office, which is with the Ghana Police Service. Report to them, and then they will assist you and help you to do the right thing. People are dying. House helps, family members, spouses, men and women alike are dying from abuses, emotional ones, which is mostly with the women doing to the men, and even physical ones. Who can report domestic violence? Any person who has notice of domestic violence can report to the police. The police has a way of making you anonymous if you want to be anonymous. If you're a family member, you can also report. If you're a social welfare officer, you can also report to the police. And then the person himself, the victim, can also report. If you're a child and you're not up to 18 years, you can get an uncle or an auntie or somebody who is standing as your next friend to go with you and report to the police that there has been a domestic violence which has been committed on you by this and that person. When you report to the police will take a statement from you, and if you request, they will give you a copy of the statement that you made to the police. If you are in need of medical assistance, the police are supposed to issue to you a report or a form for you to go to the hospital. You're not supposed to be charged for the medical treatment that you are coming for in the hospital because of the domestic violence in the form that you are coming with. Right? Which of the police stations can you report to? You can report to the police station which is closer to where you live, where the victim lives, or where the offender lives, or where you are currently residing to take refuge just because of the domestic violence. Let's say you are living in Kumasi with the person who abused you. Now you have to come all the way to Accra so that you can get refuge. You can report in Accra. So it doesn't have to be exactly where you and the person live. It can be where you are living currently, trying to get refuge from the person who is abusing you. So please take note of that. And remember that you cannot say that, oh, I have a defense because the person consented. There are some people who say that, oh, my wife wanted me to beat her. Or, oh, my wife likes it when I beat her. When I beat her, it makes things better for her. No, you cannot consent to domestic violence. If it is seen to be domestic violence, the fact that the other person consented, or let's say it's a house help, and the house help accepts that you beat her or you beat him all the time. No, the fact that he accepts for you to beat him all the time, that does not mean that the beating is normal. It is not normal. Consent is not a defense in a domestic violence case. So anyone who reports a case of domestic violence to the police is entitled to some kind of protection from the police if the circumstances so require. So in case that you go to the police and the police is aware that you are still under some form of threats, the police have every right to separate you from the offender. Or if you are a third party who reported a domestic violence between two people and you think that if the police makes this information known that you are the one who made the report, your life will be at risk, the police will have to protect you at all costs. Please advise yourself and stop abusing someone. If you don't want to be in a relationship again with the person, hey, move on. Don't send yourself to prison, because prison is no joke. Thank you. Now, kindly share with someone and let's grow the channel. Until we meet again, have a very, very good time, and please don't abuse anyone. Bye.